I knew makeup was a job, but for me, makeup,
We
the
did
I
take
thought
a makeup class together in college.
we did with Bar Matheson,
Yeah.
and uh, and
Why are you leading me up the primrose path?
Hi everyone, and welcome to Parallel Drives, a bi-monthly podcast where we talk about our past, our journey, our friendship, and everything in between. My name is Joe DeLu II, and I am here with my best friend James Vincent. Hi, James.
Hello.
Seems like I just saw you yesterday, which is what I did on your mindful action series that you're doing.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I see you more now that we're in quarantine.
I know. We video chat all the time, whereas before we like hardly saw each other or talked to each other at all. So
We
that's
would go months and months, months.
yep. So interesting that we did the mindful action yesterday because that is sort of leading to the subject of what we are going to talk about today. So we are going to discuss our makeup journeys, how we started, the struggles that we had, the successes that we had. And so, James, why don't you start off?
Sure. I think, I talk about my story all the time because I do a lot of mentoring in schools and I teach a lot of classes. And I think that the thing about my story is that it is still a way that people can step into makeup and make a path for themselves. I think a lot of times when you hear people's stories, from listening to keynotes at the makeup show or from people doing events at the Powder Group, their story can only happen for them. Like there was a once in a lifetime opportunity or relationship, and I think that my story is pretty typical in some ways. Growing up, I didn't even know makeup was a job. It just wasn't anything I knew. um, but I loved makeup, I guess, from music. MTV was huge for me. Album covers, like I would collect album covers and magazines. And then I worked at a haunted house when I was a teenager, and I really loved the airbrushing and those kind of things. But I didn't know it was a real job. And then when I was living in Atlanta, I was working at the body shop, and we had, we would do makeup to go out and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And and I would do a lot of fashion shows and things in Atlanta for like Junkman's Daughter and stuff like that. I would do the makeup for. And then I got headhunted by MAC Cosmetics, and a woman by the name of Michelle Madrid, who is such a great mentor to me, brought me in and really took me under her wing. And I had so many great mentors at that MAC counter in Atlanta. And I think what people might not remember is that MAC at that time, really, there were only a few stores in the country. Like there were no stores within 5 states. And so the MAC education was so brilliant and amazing, and you had so many mentors around you at the counter. I was so lucky. People who to this day, I use things that they taught me. And then it just kind of started to happen, and I would kind of unknowingly do the things you needed to do to work in the industry. I would do a TV gig, or I would be asked to do a fashion show for a hair salon, or I kind of dated my way through salons and clothing stores, and I dated drag queens. And I think it's that thing with gay relationships where the people that you're dating teach you who you are.
Yeah.
Like I can look back and say, Tim, who was a very famous drag queen in Atlanta and did so many cool things at the time, introduced me to things like Dusty in Memphis, which is now my favorite album, and
Mhm.
Steven, who's an amazing graphic designer and artist who works with people, big celebrities and stuff. And he introduced me to Blondie in a different way.
Mhm.
And I guess so I was learning makeup, but then at the same time, I was learning that people did makeup for music videos and people did makeup for magazines. And I started getting these little jobs. And my goal was to always go back to school. Atlanta was an escape.
What
And
did you go back to school for?
to finish my degree, I was going to get
Yeah.
a master's in social work, was what I was in school for when we met.
Yeah.
And when I was started doing makeup, I started thinking about that, like the idea of the beauty myth, like why white women in the beauty myth, like black women in the beauty myth, like why were these two different views of beauty, and why was it not accessible? Like there was no size, there was no shape, there was no color. And when I started researching and kind of doing makeup and working with people, I just fell in love with the makeup aspect of it. I fell in love with the education aspect of it, the interaction. And then I got headhunted, well, not really headhunted, but someone saw my makeup and they recommended me for some jobs. And all of a sudden I was working with celebrities. And then I started assisting makeup artists like Billy B and working on huge music videos. And then I just knew, I was like, I loved the world of makeup,
Hmm.
but I loved everything about it. Like sometimes the makeup right now is my least favorite part of the makeup world, you know? And I immersed myself in it. Makeup doesn't come naturally for me. I'm not like you or some of my friends are these really brilliant artists. I think I'm okay, but I have assistants that are technically better artists. I think what I'm good at is the design and the creativity and bringing teams together and developing product, developing looks. Like that's what I fell in love with.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know how much you want to go into like the actual story,
Well,
but
I mean, we can kind of just go do a little back and forth, and I'm sure some stories will come up. What's interesting is you are the one that got me to be a makeup artist. So I knew it was a job, but for me, that makeup as a job was doing special effects. Like that was what the makeup job was for me. But like I always loved fashion and fashion magazines and when I moved to Atlanta, yes, we would go out and I would do like fun makeup on myself and then when I moved to New York after that, and I was working on St. Mark's Place at Trash Vaudeville, and you had
and you were a fit model for Trash and Vaudeville.
I was a fit model, yeah, because
Oh, glamorous.
it was very glamorous. Didn't get paid anything,
Tiny little pants.
but yeah, because their fit model had a very long torso, so none of it
Tiny little
fit
pants.
anybody correctly because everybody would end up with a weird low crotch or a high waisted pant. Um, but yeah, and you said you're like, why don't you become a makeup artist? And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I could do that.
Yeah.
Um, and then wearing makeup into work and having stylists and photographers that would come into Trash and Vaudeville to like borrow clothes, and they would see what I look like, and then they would ask, oh, are you a makeup artist? And I would say, yes, I am, and started doing
Which
stuff
you
for
could
free.
kind of do then. Like there really weren't a lot of makeup artists. Like basically, if you wanted to be a makeup artist, you just said, "Hey, I'm a makeup artist."
And
And
then
like,
just scramble around and try and find makeup to put a kit together.
do you remember the fashion show in Atlanta where I put glitter glue on everybody because I didn't have makeup, and so I just used like Elmer's glitter glue, and, like whatever makeup we had,
Yep, yep,
and
scrounging around at the like CVS or the Dwayne Reed or like trying to be like, oh my god, I should probably get like a selection of foundations, but I don't know what to get. Um, but yeah, and so I started doing it for free, and that's I got a lot of photos from that and learned a lot. And because I had the theater background, I understood lighting, and so people enjoyed that. And I was
contour
always,
and
always big on like old Hollywood and stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff I would do would sort of like be these sort of vintagey style makeups.
I think too one of the reasons um well first I think the other thing was working at Mac was so different. Like I didn't even just say to you you should do makeup. I said you should work at Mac because I had never worked anywhere where you could just completely be yourself, which,
Yeah.
we looked at Junkman's Daughter and stuff like that, which was part of it, in the Body Shop for to a degree. But at Mac, your individuality was really celebrated, and you really were expected to be the best you could be. And I had so many great people like Keisha Winkler and Tim and Chuck, like all these people who really taught me. But I remember, this is 1994, and right, 94, 95.
When you
And
started, yeah.
when we started, and people, I remember one time, Chuck coming in a dress, and the Mac Pro counter kind of was in a department store, and the department store said he has to go home, and Mac said, if you send him home, the counter closes.
Hmm.
And just to know there was that kind of support behind you. And so I think more than anything, I wanted you to do makeup because we had shared so many different experiences, and I knew you were great at it because I had done shows with you. But I think I wanted you to have that experience of working somewhere where they didn't just allow you to be a kook or creative, they fostered it, and they, I don't know. And so I think that was the reason that I wanted you to do that. And
Yeah,
then,
and it really was great. I mean, I started off as a cashier, so I didn't even start off as a makeup artist because I didn't have enough experience as a makeup artist. But I started as
yeah,
a,
that time at Mac, you had to have a portfolio.
yeah,
You had to be a makeup artist with a portfolio.
yeah. And so I started off as the cashier, and it was great because like I would go in, we had to wear all black, so I would wear like a black sheer shirt and put black duct tape or electrical tape over my nipples. But what was great with that was that all of the artists that I work with, when I would come in, I would let them do whatever makeup they wanted to on me, and I would wear it for the day. But what that did for me too was I was able to watch all of these different people and all the different styles of makeup and the way that they did makeup, and have them do it on me and learn by watching what they did. And for me, that was like the most valuable, like that was better than going to classes and learning in classes, because I was watching someone physically doing it on myself and could understand. And then if I needed to, I could ask questions. I thought that was such a great way to train someone.
Yeah, because there were no classes then. Where were you going to go if you didn't work for Mac? There was no makeup education. I think the Powder Group was truly the first that really kind of brought that type of education.
Yeah.
But you had to learn from other people. And I think that nobody wanted to teach you, like people were afraid. And so for me to have so many great mentors, or for you to have those artists teaching you, like Mac really was about sharing ideas. And so I learned from every person that was there, and they were better than me. So it was like constantly trying to keep up. And I was going to say earlier, the other thing is you and I are very reference oriented.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the thing that I say all the time to makeup artists. Like, we do so much research, and we are, we love to kind of mine the past and pull out those pieces of Hollywood or television or art or film. And I think that that helped us move faster,
Yeah.
because what would happen is you would be 24 years old. I guess I was 23, 24, and working with these people who were such pros, and you had kind of said, like, when they asked if you were a makeup artist, you said yes, because
Yeah.
there weren't a lot of us.
Yeah.
And then they would say, like, I want this to look like Toulouse-Lautrec, or I want this to look like Picasso's Blue Period, or I want this to look like Marilyn Monroe. And we had that because we're naturally inspired that way, and then our theater program in school really kind of, I think, was such a great program for preparing me to build a character and do my research.
Yeah, and I also my major was graphic design, so I had art background as well. So I understood. So for me, I knew a lot of the art background. It's also why I feel like I'm so good with color, was because of that education. And then theater was my minor,
Yeah.
so I learned a lot about creating character through that. And you know, and I think that we always joke about Bara Matheson, who was the costume designer for Rhode Island College, and who was the one that taught us, taught us.
Such a genius costume designer.
I mean, she taught us so much, and she was so smart at what she did, and so I think that, at the time, you think, okay, this woman's a little cuckoo crazy, but then when you think back on it, you're like, oh wow, I learned a lot from that. I mean, totally inappropriate things where we had to make ourselves a different ethnicity, but hey, um, but
That could not happen today.
that could not happen today, but also very educational if you're looking at it from a different perspective of, you just how the, facial structure, facial
Like
color.
if you had to do Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's or something like appropriate like that.
Oh no, that stage make what's interesting. So what's really interesting. So the stage makeup book that we learned from, the one that teaches you how to do an oriental eye.
Yeah.
Um, now they no longer put that in the book, but that book that we learned with, I am actually in the newest edition of.
Ooh, congratulations.
Yeah, so it's cool because I actually have the old edition, and now I have the new edition that I'm in and my designs are in. So that's kind of fun, and it's really interesting to think back and think, at the time of, flipping through this book and learning makeup through this book, that how many years later I would be in the book.
Yeah.
My designs would be in the book. So it's such a
That's, I
strange.
love that. You know what? And you know what's funny? Yeah, like it was a different time and we learned different things, but it was such an education. And I try and explain that to people. And I remember I was doing a movie. I didn't do a lot of film or television because I'm not union. I do mostly fashion and celebrity. But uh, because of the actors that were in a movie, I was asked to do some makeup design. And it was exciting for me. And so with this particular movie, I don't want to give too many details, but it was for, celebrity actresses and it was set in the 70s. And so the direction to me was, oh, well, it's just, these are four women that live in the Midwest in the 70s. So it's not much makeup. And then as I started to pull out the characters, I was like, no, one is like a hippie, who is very counterculture and in her 20s, and one is a former model from New York City who's now living in the Midwest because she's a mother. How like, and one uh, was a woman was a professor but from another country and was very like in the art scene. And I
Mhm.
was like, well, these are the pieces that you have to put into your makeup. And I thought if someone had just listened and said, oh, it's just the 70s and live in the Midwest. And I think that we have, that's kind of for me is a very typical way to approach a project, even if it's a beauty makeup, like who is this person and what do they look like.
Yeah.
I think that started early in my career.
Yeah, and I mean that's how I approach all these characters that I do, these drag characters. Like I don't just make them up in my head. I have reference pictures. So like the drag class that we did for the makeup show the other day, like I was doing this new character that I had been thinking about but hadn't really manifested. And she's had a bunch of plastic surgery, and so I found reference pictures. I went through. I got inspired. So it wasn't just about me just figuring out what I was going to do on my face and throwing some face tapes on and then like doing a makeup. It was like, well, what kind of makeup? Like looking at these women who have had plastic surgery. There's a very specific style of makeup that they usually wear too. Like, and especially for what I wanted to do for this character. So understanding what that character was and then being able to find the references for it. And even some of the new characters I'm coming up, like I find reference pictures for them that I can sort of base it on and then go from there. I think
Yeah.
that's really important in anything, in anything that you're doing.
I think New York at the time too, because you started doing makeup in New York and I started in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And then I left Mac in a blaze of glory.
Or
And,
fire, depending on how you look at it.
but yeah, I had, I'll tell the story. I had been approached by Urban Decay Cosmetics. I knew I wanted to move to New York. I knew I was planning with you because you were getting married and I was coming up to be your best man. And I knew I always wanted to be in New York and it was like my time to go. And so I got an offer from Urban Decay and they paid for me to move to New York City. um, and to open the first Urban Decay counters in New York. And so my friend Andy Jones and I jumped in a U-Haul and moved to New York City. And New York was just such a different thing. Like Atlanta, I think it was such a creative place, and there were so many club kids and musicians, and it was at that time Atlanta was very cool and 24 hours and such
Yeah.
a city. But it felt a little insular, and I knew that I wanted to be on the bigger stage, and I had been coming back and forth for years with Mac and visiting you, and New York was just such a different thing for me. New York made me very quiet. You know, I'm very I used to be very quiet anyway, but I think back to those days and I meet people from those times now and they don't remember me, but really I was kind of taking it all in. You
Mm.
know, I loved to study people. I was never the coolest or cutest one in the room. I never, you know, I think that I just learned to watch people and I loved scenes. Even now, I loved, growing up, I loved the Max's Kansas City scene or the CBGB scene. And I think just
Yeah.
to the East Village of the 90s, it was such a great time for makeup. And there was so much photography and fashion and art, and so many of the cool stores were in the East Village, and so many creative people. And we were out 7 nights a week, pretty
Yeah.
much.
I remember we used to go out and do like black eyes or like cuts
I
on
still do.
ourselves to go out, and people would come up and be like, I know, because I would put like a little butterfly band-aid on it as well, like do a fake cut and then put a little butterfly band-aid,
I
and
love
I
that.
remember like some girl coming up to me and going, "Oh my God, I know that probably hurt a lot. That
I
is
love
so sexy." And I'd be like, "No, it didn't hurt at all, and it's gonna come off later tonight. So hey, it's fine."
Midnight
Um,
Cruise.
but yeah, you know, it, when I started the journey of makeup, I had no clue that it was going to lead me to where I am today. And I say this a lot where when I'm talking to people about my career, and I say, you know, I would have never thought, even when we were in college, the people in the magazines that we saw, the celebrities that the movies that we loved that like we could quote, I never thought that I would ever be doing makeup for any of these people or become friends with any of these people. And it was never in my head to have that career. Like at that time, my career was I'm going to be a makeup artist and I'm going to do makeup and I'm going to work for Mac.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like I had no ambition to do anything else at that point. And because it was also at that time working for Mac was that sort of prestige. It
It
was
was. It was like the coolest job. Like when I lived in Atlanta, I remember because it would be like, "Oh, you're James from Mac." You know, it was like I'm giving myself a black eye while we're
I see that. I didn't think you were just like highlighting or contouring.
talking.
I've already had makeup on 3 times today, so I can't put any more makeup on. Otherwise, my eyes will really hate me. Um, they'll be more hooded than ever. I'm gonna have to put some face tapes on for our next podcast.
For
So
your daily
like
life,
my eyes look like this. Um,
for your grinder photos.
um, but yeah, I never expected that my career would move in this direction. And part of your mindful action seminar on Tuesday, which I think was really good because I've had this weekend was a really bad weekend for me.
You should have come down for Pride.
I thought about it, and then the thought of coming down to New York, I was like,
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
I wanted to be in that presence. Because we didn't get our Pride celebration up here. We didn't get our march up here, and so I wanted to be part of that because I
And
feel I'm missing something.
is that too much? Maybe.
No, I think it's good. Maybe a little darker too.
Oh.
Little more like a darker purple, just a little bit in there. Um, but also I should probably put on my glasses because you look blurry to me. So it could look good. It could look really good, and I just don't know.
See
Oh
how
no,
I said to
that does
fail.
look good. Oh no, that does look good. Um, but yeah, so So it was a tough weekend because I realized one, unemployment is technically supposed to run out in July.
Mm.
Um, and I have no work coming in. Broadway now announced that it's not really opening until 2021, and I'll be surprised when it opens in 2021, if it does indeed open in 2021. So all those jobs are canceled, plus all of the royalties from shows that I would get that I have designed.
About that.
Yeah, I'm not getting them. And a lot of those shows have closed now. So, that was money that when I had loss of work or wasn't really working a lot, like that money kept me afloat.
Mhm.
And I don't even have that anymore. Uh, and so, and it, it really hit me this weekend where I was thinking, wow, a film and TV, like, I don't think they're going to open for a while. So in my head, basically, I have no work for the rest of the year. And I don't have enough money saved up to be able to survive for the rest of the year. Um, and so I have had to get a part time job at my friend's boutique. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful that he, asked me to do this. I'm very grateful that I will be making a little bit of money every week. I'm grateful that I can have a flexible schedule so that if things do open up and I do need to take time off or I do need to like work, I can. And I told them like this is important. Like if we do open up, I need to work because I need to keep my benefits. I can't afford to not have health and dental insurance. And they were very cool with that. So I'm very grateful for that. But there was a part of me that had this little breakdown where I thought, wow, I have worked so hard to get to this level, to be where I am, to do what I do.
Yeah.
And now I'm having to go work in a retail store 2 days a week so I can make a little bit of money. Not even as like money to, pay for all of my bills, but just like a little bit of money that will pay for a little bit of something. And there is the opportunity there with other things that could happen with the store and other stores that they want to do and being more involved in the store than just working it and you know buying discussing with them like home stuff because I love interior design and lifestyle and home goods and so there's that opportunity. So
We
I'll
love
actually,
knickknacks.
huh?
We love a knick-a-knack, a
I
bric-a-brac.
I do. Look at
Pasta.
but you know, but there's that thought, and your seminar on Tuesday was such a good thing to do because it made me think back about the things that I have done and why I started doing this and filming and do the Quarantini Pride special that I've been doing this week and doing my makeup as all these different characters and having done your seminar on Tuesday really made me remember how much I actually love doing this and how I love doing character and how I love creating characters, creating worlds, and how proud I have been of the things that I have done and the shows that I have done. And even though this is such a unknown time and I don't know what the future is going to hold for me, um, it made me realize what a great career and a great life that I have had up to this point that I never imagined that I would have sitting in Rhode Island. Um, so so thank you. That was a really great thing to be able to go through and to hear.
Oh, you're welcome. It's one of the, I said it about you the other day. I don't know if I said it to you, but,
Don't
when you're
talk about me like I'm not here.
she's finally making some sense. Um, what if I froze? Like,
I thought I froze again. I was like, oh no, not again. This is such a good moment.
The introducing you and, doing this weekly, now bi-weekly, it was just,
Bi-monthly, not bi-weekly. God, we never get it done if it was bi-weekly.
oh no, bi-monthly. I would never get it done. I just was thinking, like, this is like my best friend, and I'm like Emmy nominated Joe Dulude, from this show and that show, and the designs that you've done that are now iconic for shows like Wicked. Like, that's fucking major. Like, whoever thought when we were sitting, at Dunkin' Donuts at 2 in the morning in Providence, Rhode Island. I really think when I was there, I thought my life would just be there. I didn't know anybody who did anything else or had left, or and then things happened where I had to leave, and it was like, I'm glad I had that push. But we're survivors. We've lived on nothing before. Like, I watched when this pandemic happened, every job I have for the year has disappeared. And my role in this industry, because of the work that Shelly does and the work that Michael does, with the makeup show and the powder group, my role is really to help everybody else feel safe and secure. And so I think that I had my doubts, and I thought, how will I survive this? And I think what I will tell you is, you've got it. You've done it a million times. You have restarted. You're the phoenix from the flame. It's like what we do in this industry.
Yeah.
We are carny folk. We go from city to city, from job to job, and we have those times where we're on top of the world and we're doing, I've had moments where I've done the makeup for the biggest music video in the world,
Yeah.
and then sat in a bar while someone, talked shit about me. And it's just that we're creatives, we're artists. And yeah, this is a tough time. You are not going to be able to make your money the way you always do, but I don't doubt that in a few weeks something will turn up, because it always does for you. I mean, that's your life. And
Yes.
the
I
thing is,
have
you
to
have
trust
the
it.
skill set, and you have the resume, and you have the representation to back it up.
Yeah.
And if it goes down again, we'll just move into an apartment together with a one no sink and a tub in the kitchen, and we'll just figure it all over again. We'll just be
Well,
old.
I don't know if I could do that.
But this time we've got
The
Jeremy.
thing is, though,
Jeremy's.
thinking about it too, like, I think, yes, I can live a much simpler life than what I have been living. But also, we are older now, and we want different things. We need different things.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine going back and living like I did when I lived at the Chapel Blanc, which was our house in Providence that we
Yeah.
lived.
And I'm not saying that we should do that, and I'm not
Yeah,
saying that we want to do that, but I'm saying if we had to do that, we would.
but that is the thing, like, and that's why I took this job, because I was like, at least I'll have a little bit of money coming in, and it may not be what I want to do or what I ever thought I'd be doing at this point, unless it was my store and I was doing it for me. But this is what I have to do right now. And and I'm hoping that some other things may come up, and yes, usually they do. Usually, like, whenever I've been in this situation before, something has happened. I mean, it was like that when I got Jesus Christ Superstar. I had decided I was getting out of makeup, and I took a part-time job working for a study abroad company that specialized in the performing arts. And I was like, great. And there was,
I told you not to do that.
this is what I'm going to do, because I'm like, but I hadn't worked in
I
months.
told you.
But I hadn't worked in months and months, and I was coming down, and I came to the point where, in that time, where I had no money in my bank account, like $0. And I've never been at that place. I've been at a place where I've had very little, and then I'll get a little bit more, and then I'll have very little and get a little bit more. But when I reached that place where there was no money in my checking and no money in my savings, I freaked out. And so I got this job, part-time job, which took over my life because it was 30 hours a week. So it was just every day, and it was not what I wanted to be. And I
It
was sitting,
was what most people do.
yeah, it was sitting behind a desk. It was being on a computer all day. I started getting styes on my eyes. Like my neck would hurt so bad. Like every part of me hurt bad.
You
And
are describing the way most people work.
I know. And I was like, I could just, and I'd have to cold call people that had been that suggested interest into this company.
Oh,
And I would work from home one day a week. And I was doing the cold calls. And what really made me decide to stop was, and I'd be calling like these very young college kids, and I don't know why they answer, because if I don't recognize the number, I don't answer the phone.
they don't know anybody money yet.
So they, they answer, and then you talk to them, and they have no idea what you're talking about. And then, or they try to avoid the subject. Well, I called this girl, and I said, I'll just say her name is Sarah. I'll be like, "Hi, is Sarah there?" And she went, "What?" And I said, "Is Sarah there?" She goes, "What?" And I was like, "Is Sarah there?" And she went, I was like, "Is this Sarah?" And she said, "No, it's not." And I said, "Oh, it's not? Really? It's not? Okay, then." And then I hung up on her, and I was like, I think I need to quit. Um, and then interestingly, when I made that decision where I was like, okay, and I wasn't quitting right away because there were a lot of other circumstances, and I couldn't leave at that point to be able to do it. And but I knew in my head that I was going to be quitting.
Yes,
And
I got to the day you decided.
yeah, and then like right after that, I got the call. Um, I got a text from Chuck LaPointe, who's my friend, who's a wig designer that I work with a lot, and he said, "I'm doing the Donna Summer musical. You should text Paul Taswell, who's a costume designer that I work with, and get on it." And I was like, "Great." And I texted Paul, and I said, "I'd love, if you need someone, I'll do it." And he said, "Well, yeah, I would love for you to do it, but there's something else happening at the same time that I'd like you to do." And then we talked on the phone, and he said it was Jesus Christ Superstar live for NBC. And I was like, "Yes, I'll do it." And then, yeah. So
Donna Summer was a stinker.
we referred to it as Donna Bummer. It was a jukebox musical. So it was basically, let's just throw her songs in there and kind of fabricate a story around it.
No, no, but this is, I'm going to say to you I'm going to say to you what I would say to every artist, but particularly you because I know you. You cannot fill a vessel and then expect to get something delicious to drink. You know what I mean? So sometimes you have to have these periods where you are empty so that the opportunity and the creativity and all of those things can come. And I have found that when things get to zero, that's sometimes when the opportunity is there. So I love that at least the boutique, you have this flexible schedule and all these things, because I don't doubt that as people are trying to figure out how everything opens up, it will be there. When quarantine first happened, I had a dozen brands reach out to me to pick my brain and ask for ideas and do all of these things. Two of them hired me
Mm.
to do some stuff when I really needed things. The powder group and the makeup show were, before they thought of themselves, Michael called and checked on me. Shelly made sure I was okay. And then to have these two brands that I have known for so long say, hey, yeah, we're here to help you with whatever you need. We're going to hire you to do these classes. But I was literally at zero, and I thought, well, this is what it's about. And so is it, do I begrudge the brands that picked my brain and then did it with other artists or influencers? Or do I, you know, um, I don't know, do I look for something different because my income has been really crazily depleted?
Yeah.
I have to keep moving forward and figuring out different ways to do the things that I love to do. And makeup is an industry that is flexible. You can use these talents and relationships and um, ideas and kind of knowledge to work in so many different directions. And so if the opportunity comes for you and it's education, or the opportunity comes for you and it's a working with a brand to show some of the Broadway characters that you've done, or it's a new TV or film that's shooting in a completely different way, I think that you have to be available for it. Because for me, I imagine that, when HD came in, I had never worked in high definition, really. I worked in editorial, but the artists who were working in standard definition in TV and film were too heavy handed. And so they had to bring in artists who had a lighter touch and who knew cameras and lighting, and that was me. And so I went in and I did all of this education. When sets come back and there are not going to be people there maybe to do every actor's makeup, it's going to be a lot like theater. And so they're going to need makeup designers who are educators, who can bring talent through applying their own makeup on some sets. And you are more than set up to do that.
Yeah.
People are going to have to re-educate themselves on these new mediums. People are going to have to reorient themselves on character, and Broadway will look very different. And who are they going to go to? The person who understands Broadway and film and television, because they're going to start putting Broadway in virtual ways because people won't want to be in theater. Who are they going to come to? The person who knows the 6K camera. Like, I think sometimes when we get caught up in the everything is not where it needs to be right now, we forget that there are these incubation stages, and you are well prepared. You've got the knowledge and you've got the skill set, and I think you have to trust that you've done the work, and that when the changes come, you will adapt and adjust and stretch.
Yeah.
And I think that this is things that I would say to other people, but I'm tailoring it to kind of the industry that you're working in. Your shows will come back and the work will come back, and that is for sure. Will it look different? Yes. And will the people who cannot adjust to the different ways of working survive it? Maybe not. But that is not you, because you always adjust and you always adapt and you always have. And so I'm not saying we're going back to those days of living on us one slice of pizza for an entire.
Macaroni and cheese out of a box.
But what I'm saying is that we know what it's like to have to strip down and retool our plan.
Yeah.
And that is all this is,
Yeah.
really.
No, and it has been. I mean, there's so much, I think it was just this moment now where I kind of saw this long distance that I would have to travel. Um, and and I think that freaked me out a little bit. But I've been doing things to sort of take care of that. Like that night, I meditated for an hour. I listened to music. I did some drumming and sort of put myself in this mind space. And then, on Tuesday, I had your seminar, which was really great. And I have I've been commissioned to do a piece of artwork for this place here in Amherst. So it's great, and it's been such a great place for me to be able to be creative. I mean, I had all of the paintings that I did, which I hope will continue to lead to something. It's just that I can't show them anywhere right now. But I've been asked by a couple people like that want to buy them. So I know that there's a future there, and doing the drag and doing Quarantini and doing these videos, like I know there's a future there, and it's something that I had been working on before.
Which you had never had this much time
To actually do it. Yeah. And like I have I'm working with someone and we have a treatment for a TV show, which obviously cannot happen now because it's a reality TV show, and we're not going to be able to go out into communities yet, you know. And I have a treatment that I wrote up for a makeup competition show, um, that, you know, also can't be done right now. You know, so it's these things that I have been working on, which now I've had the time to really work on and really adjust, and may even have to adjust more. So, you know, I appreciate this time. You know, because most of the time I don't have this amount of time to be able to do these kind of things, you know. But it was, you know, I think it's important to acknowledge these moments when you have these freakouts, when you think that things aren't. And I've had them before. And yes, and then things have gotten better. You know, I think this is a different situation because this is out of,
This is something there is no control.
yeah. So, but yeah, and I know things will work out some way, some form. But yeah, it was just it was a tough weekend. So
No, it was. I know it was, babe. But it's just right now, I was there the last 2 weeks. I couldn't even record with you one week. It is very normal right now that we are feeling these different emotions. And I think that people are going through them. There's kind of a wave where people are kind of having these emotions at the same time, but quarantining with a partner and quarantine alone are very different. And so I think that you manage to do all of these things with your time. um, but then in those moments where you're still, it starts to pile up.
yeah.
And for people that are used to going all the time, if I'm not a makeup artist, who am I? I've said that in a few different things. But it's important that you remember when we started in this, uh, we had no idea what was even possible.
Mhm.
And now I think because we're in it and we think we know the industry, we think we know all of the opportunity that's there. But in this shift, new things will open up, and the people who are prepared and ready and able to take them will be the ones who do it. The
Yeah.
world is changing very quickly right now. We are coming out of, you know, a time of darkness. Does that mean there's a renaissance, coming next? And who better to do that than you, like the quadruple threat? You But if
Uh,
you're, I say if everything is full of those base emotions, which I do think you have to honor, and I do think you have to feel authentically. But if you are full of despair and grief and fear and anger, how do you make room for all of the good things that are coming next?
yeah. No, and I always agree with that. And I think that's why, like, doing your webinar on Tuesday night, like I really needed that. I really needed to hear those things, um, to put my mind in a different place. And it did. It
And
put my,
that's why I call it mindful action, because um, it isn't just about listening and meditating. It's about what are the actual steps, like actionable, measurable steps that you can put into place
yeah. Yeah.
to make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do.
Yeah.
Which, pick a number, one, two, or three.
Oh, three. This might be boring for the people at home that are only listening. What is
Oh,
that?
yeah. It is the egg card. It is birth. It is all about those new things that are coming. I will read it for the people at home. It says, new projects, ideas, fresh start, and innocence. Drawing this card announces the arrival of a new beginning or the start of something beautiful. It can indicate a need or desire to start over, and with the attitude of innocence, which is not to be confused with naivete. Have a beginner's spirit, invite the enthusiasm and excitement of starting something you always dreamed of without fear getting in the way. And that is the card.
You know, that's so funny that that card came up because the other night when I have the archetype deck, it's the
Yeah.
round cards, and I pulled it out, and the warrior, like I was feeling so down and so just like, how can I go on? And the card that I pulled out was the warrior.
The warrior.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was basically the same, like that same thing that we've been talking about all, for this whole time, is just like, you have this, you can continue to go on, you have the strength to be able to do it, and you just have to realize that you do have that. And I'm always amazed at when, I pull the cards for very specific times and very specific things, how they're always very appropriate to what is going on.
And my card for you, the Raven magic.
Oh, yay.
Well, Joe, this is a very different episode. This is like an after school, but this is a very special
That is
episode,
a very after school
like
special.
an after school special without one of us getting, brought to the back of the store by Gordon Jump, like a episode of.
Yeah. Or one of us ODing, or in the locker room at school,
Or
or
teen pregnant. Oh,
yeah, or getting pregnant, yeah.
we're doing drugs with Nancy Reagan.
Yeah, or playing Dungeons and Dragons and then making it a live action, and then like freaking out and thinking that you're really that person, and you're caught in an underground labyrinth with
One episode on satanic panic. Right now. I'm really into the satanic panic, um,
Mhm.
and I'm really into teenage tragedy songs, sort of from the 50s and 60s.
The next podcast we should talk about how the satanic panic, and how, like, growing up in the 70s, how how Satanism was like the big thing.
Take a note.
Cult
That's
was the big thing. I think that'd be a really good one. All right. Let us finish up with one thing that this week that brought you joy. And I know we've been gone for 2 weeks, so we have 2 weeks from. But what is something that brought you joy over the last 2 weeks?
So it has. New York is still so activated. We've been rallying and protesting and do anything we can using our platforms for Black Lives Matter. And June 28th, this past Sunday, was Pride here in New York, and it is 50 years since the first Christopher Street Day, and the first march, and 51 years to the day since Stonewall. And this year, Take Back Pride decided to make it about Black Lives Matter and trans lives. And it was just so fantastic. It was like we started the day with the Black Lives Matter meditation, and then we gathered in Foley Square, and like 20,000, people
Mm.
just like marching and chanting. And it was such a peaceful protest. And at the end, honestly, the cops came in with pepper spray and batons like they always do. But it was so amazing to see so much diversity and love in the streets, in our community, speaking out for Black Lives Matter, reminding the world that in New York it is never a parade, it is a march.
Yeah.
And Stonewall was a riot, and like I just appreciated it. I missed being with my queer community, and I miss you know it was just nice to activate, and it's so important. And I'm just weepy now.
No, and I was so disappointed that there was no, like, we didn't have anything up here for our Pride. I mean, our Pride comes a little earlier anyway, but there was nothing up here, and I just felt that I missed that this year. I missed that feeling of community this year. But my moment of joy is a very simple one. I was walking into town. I don't live very far from the downtown, so I was walking into town to go to the co-op to buy some groceries, some things that I needed, and walked by the coffee shop, which had been closed for a very long time, and saw that I had seen that it had been open. And I was waiting for the crosswalk symbol, and I turned and I saw the back of this woman with a really big hat, and I was like, that looks like my friend Linda. And I was like, it's probably not her. And then I'm waiting with my back turned, and I hear my other friend Jack come out of the store and say something. And so I turned around and it was Linda and it was Jack. And so I went into the coffee shop and got some coffee, and the three of us sat outside and just like chatted about stuff. And it was just really nice because it's those are the things that I'm really missing. And
Yeah.
so just be able to have that short moment of just having some coffee with some friends and sitting there and like talking about what we're working on. It was a really wonderful experience. So I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this week. This is Parallel Drives. I'm Joe DeLude. This is James Vincent. You can catch us on Buzzsprout,
That's on the flip side.
on iHeartRadio, also on my YouTube channel, although I don't think I'm going to have a lot of editing or fun pictures to put in this episode. But
Mm.
if you'd like to watch us, you can, and then you can actually see the cards that James pulled. But we will be back to join you in 2 more weeks with our next episode. So stay tuned, and thank you for joining us. And stay safe out there, and keep letting your voice be heard because it needs to be heard.
Don't give up because you have us. Stay optimistic. I promise you. I promise you. In when you are preparing yourself and you are looking ahead and looking back and remembering who you are, like it just will happen. You have to trust it.
Yeah, I think it's good, and I think that's a good thing to leave everybody with is look back on your life, look at these good things that have happened to you, and reflect on these good things that have happened to you, and remember them because those are the things that keep you going. So thank you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.